financial planning resources.
Right. We want to break it down so you, the listener, really get what's going on.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Social Security. It's a cornerstone for millions. But the latest trustees report, the 2025 one, sounds some pretty serious alarms. What's the headline news we need to know right off the bat?
Well, Paul, the main takeaway is pretty stark, honestly. The Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, that's OASI, it's projected to run out of reserves in 2033.
2033. Wow, that's only 8 years away.
Exactly, just 8 years. And if Congress doesn't act, under current law, that means an automatic, across-the-board 23% benefit cut for all retirees.
23%. That's huge.
It is. And even if they take a different approach, like reallocating money from the Disability Insurance Fund, SSDI, the combined funds would still run out by 2034.
Okay, so shifting money around only buys about a year.
Pretty much. And in that scenario, it would still mean a 19% benefit cut. Still very significant.
So a 23% cut, maybe 19%.
Yeah.
Practically speaking. What does that mean for someone maybe planning retirement right now or even already retired? How should you adjust your thinking?
Well, it fundamentally means that just counting on Social Security to be the bulk of your retirement income, that's becoming a much riskier bet.
Yeah, you really can't rely on it solely.
No, these aren't small tweaks we're talking about. Cuts of this size would force a lot of people to drastically change their plans, maybe work longer than expected, or, accept a much lower standard of living in retirement.
And it's not just the insolvency date, right? There are other financial pressures.
Oh, definitely. The system is facing these growing cash deficits. We're talking $3.6 trillion over just the next 10 years.
3.6 trillion.
Yeah. And these yearly shortfalls, they're just projected to get bigger and bigger, growing significantly by 2050 and even more by the end of the century.
So this isn't some short-term blip. It's a long-term structural problem with these deficits just piling up.
Precisely. And then there's what they call the 75-year actuarial deficit. Think of it like the total amount we need to set aside right now to cover all the promises made over the next 75 years.
Okay, what's that number look like?
It's now 3.82% of taxable payroll, which in today's dollars translates to about $26 trillion.
$26 trillion. That's almost hard to comprehend, kind of like the system's giant IOU.
Exactly. And what's really striking, Paul, is that this is the biggest shortfall they've reported in almost 50 years. It's nearly double what it was back in 2010.
Yeah. Double. In just, 15 years? That seems like a really fast deterioration. What's pushing it down so quickly?
It's a mix of things. The gap got worse just from last year. Went from 3.50% to this 3.82%.
Yeah.
And actually, almost half of that worsening was due to the passage of the Social Security Fairness Act. It allows certain state and local government workers to effectively double dip between Social Security and their own pensions.
Huh. So a law meant to create fairness for one group actually added to the system's overall financial whole, in a way.
From a solvency perspective, yes, that's what the analysis shows. And then you add in other things like regulatory changes for disability eligibility, lower birth rate projections.
Right. Fewer workers supporting more retirees down the line.
Exactly. And even shifts in the economy where wages make up a smaller piece of the pie. It all adds up. Interestingly, higher immigration actually helped the balance slightly, brought in more workers paying in.
But not enough to overcome the other factors.
Not nearly enough, no. Each small piece contributes to the bigger picture.
Okay, so we have this stark picture of Social Security's future, potentially big cuts coming. How does this reality line up with what people think retirement is going to be like? I bet there are some myths we need to bust.
Oh, absolutely. Let's pivot right there. Because understanding these common retirement myths is crucial for you to align your planning with the future you actually want.
Sounds good. What's the first big one we should tackle for our listener?
Myth number 1. Your retirement savings will definitely last as long as you do.
Ah, the longevity risk.
Exactly. The reality is we're living longer, a lot longer. Think about this. About 1 in 3 people who are 65 today will live past 90, and 1 in 7 will make it to 95 or more.
That's incredible, but it means your money has to stretch further.
Right. It seriously increases the risk of outliving your savings. And like we just discussed, Social Security alone, it just won't be enough for most people, especially with potential cuts.
So what's the planning implication there?
It means you really need to consider strategies for protected income, things that guarantee income for life, like annuities. They can be part of the solution.
Okay, so plan for a long life. Got it. What's myth number 2?
Myth number 2. Your living costs will automatically go down in retirement.
Right. People assume, mortgage paid off, kids gone. less spending.
Yeah, and while some costs might decrease, like maybe
Hmm.
the mortgage or car loans if they're paid off, others can actually increase significantly.
Like what?
Healthcare is the big one, obviously, but also discretionary spending. Maybe you want to travel more, pursue hobbies, and don't forget inflation. That's a huge
I
threat.
saw a stat on that. Huge concern for retirees right now.
Massive. 90% of people nearing retirement cited inflation as a top worry. And here's something interesting. Current retirees, they actually spend more of their income on basic living expenses, about 53%, than pre-retirees expect to spend, which is around 42%.
So reality bites, basically. You spend more on essentials than you think you will.
Pretty much. Plus, unexpected things always pop up: home repairs, helping family. That could blow up a budget quick. The idea that expenses just shrink isn't reliable.
So the takeaway isn't just that you might spend more, but you absolutely have to plan for inflation and those curveballs. Ignoring them is a big mistake.
Couldn't agree more. And that throws right into myth number 3. Social Security will cover all your expenses.
You kind of touched on this, but it bears repeating.
Definitely. For an average earner retiring at 65, Social Security today replaces only about 37% of their pre-retirement earnings. 37%.
That's way less than most people probably assume.
Way less. And surveys show over a third of current retirees actually got less from Social Security than they expected. And then you layer on that potential 23% cut we talked about starting in 2033.
Yeah.
Nearly 3/4 of retirees say a cut like that would impact their retirement a lot.
So the advice here is pretty clear, isn't it?
It is. If you can, consider waiting until age 70 to claim benefits, because that maximizes your monthly amount. But critically, you absolutely need other significant savings. Relying just on Social Security is not a viable plan.
That 37% number really drives it home. It's a supplement, not the whole retirement picture. Okay, what about healthcare? That's always a huge worry. Myth number 4.
Myth number 4, Medicare will cover all your medical bills, and it's free.
Oh, that's a dangerous one.
Hugely dangerous. Medicare is not free. There are premiums, there are deductibles, there are co-payments, and these costs can add up very quickly, especially if you have significant health issues.
People really underestimate this, don't they?
They do. Over half of people surveyed, 59%, said they lack confidence in their ability to pay for health care as they get older.
So what can you do? What are the strategies?
Well, first, you need to budget specifically for healthcare costs in retirement. If you're eligible, contributing to a health savings account, an HSA, during your working years is a fantastic tool. Considering long-term care insurance is also important. And crucially, choosing the right Medicare plan, Original Medicare plus a Medigap, or a Medicare Advantage plan that fits your needs and budget.
So planning for potentially big out-of-pocket medical costs is essential. Okay, last myth.
Myth number 5, you can just work for as long as you want or need to.
The I'll just work longer fallback plan.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but life often gets in the way. Health problems might force you to stop working sooner than you'd like. You might need to become a caregiver for a spouse or parent. Or, the job market changes, layoffs happen.
Reality intrudes again.
It does. Nearly 1 in 5 retirees actually stopped working earlier than they planned. And among those who retired early, almost 2/3 said it wasn't really by choice.
So what's the mindset shift needed here?
It's really adopting that hope for the best but plan for the worst approach. Don't build your entire retirement plan on the assumption that you'll definitely be able to work until 70 or 75. Have backup plans.
Right. So we've got this gap between expectations and the financial realities, especially around Social Security and costs. Now, let's shift to what policymakers are doing or maybe not doing about some of this, particularly around taxes and federal benefits.
Okay, yeah. Let's get into some of the recent legislative buzz and potential changes. A big one being discussed is what former President Trump calls the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or OBBA.
Right, the OBBBA. And during the campaign, there was a promise made about Social Security taxes, wasn't there?
Yes, a promise to eliminate federal income taxes on Social Security benefits entirely.
Okay, so is that promise actually in this proposed OBBA bill?
And that's where it gets interesting, Paul. No, it's not. That specific promise to eliminate federal taxes on Social Security benefits is notably absent from the current proposals for the OBBA.
Really? That seems like a pretty major thing to leave out after campaigning on it. Why wouldn't it be in there?
Well, there seem to be 2 main reasons. First, there are Senate budget rules, specifically something called the Byrd Rule. It basically puts strict limits on what can go into a special kind of budget bill called a reconciliation bill.
Okay.
And big changes to Social Security generally aren't allowed under those rules. It makes it very difficult procedurally.
So Senate rules are one hurdle. What's the other reason?
The sheer cost. Getting rid of federal taxes on Social Security benefits. Estimates show that would reduce federal revenue by somewhere around $1.5 to $1.6 trillion over 10 years.
Wow, that's a massive price tag.
It is. And ironically, doing that could actually make the Social Security trust fund problem worse, potentially accelerating when the funds run out that 2034 date we mentioned for the combined funds.
Okay, so if they're not eliminating the tax on benefits, what are they proposing in this bill for older Americans instead? Is there anything?
Yes, there's an alternative idea. It's a bonus standard deduction specifically for people aged 65 and older.
A bonus deduction, how would that work?
The House Republican version suggests an extra $4,000 deduction. The Senate version floats $6,000. This would be temporary, just for 2025 through 2028.
And who would benefit most from that?
It seems targeted more towards lower and middle income retirees. It would help reduce their taxable income, which in turn reduces how much of their Social Security is taxed. But there are income phase-outs, so higher earners likely wouldn't see much, if any, benefit.
So it's a smaller tax break, much less costly than eliminating the tax entirely.
Exactly. This bonus deduction approach is estimated to cost around $200 billion over 10 years, compared to that $1.5 trillion plus figure for eliminating the tax altogether.
Makes the budget math pretty clear. Okay, beyond taxes, what else is potentially in this big, beautiful bill that could affect federal programs people rely on?
Well, another major proposal is a significant cut to Medicaid funding, about $715 billion over 10 years.
$715 billion from Medicaid, that sounds substantial. What could the consequences of a cut that size be for everyday people?
It could have really wide-ranging effects. Medicaid pays for a huge amount of nursing home care and home health care services for seniors and people with disabilities.
Right, so cuts there could directly impact elder care.
Absolutely. There's also concern it could lead to small rural hospitals closing or having to cut staff because they rely heavily on Medicaid payments, which, could mean higher out-of-pocket costs for families trying to find care, fewer nurses, longer wait times, really tangible impacts.
Definitely hits close to home for many communities. Now, what about the Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA? There's been a lot of talk about changes there, too, separate from this bill.
That's right. Former President Trump recently signed an executive order focused on veterans' benefits, and his administration has broader plans for the VA itself.
Okay, what's in the executive order?
It focuses on a few key areas. First, tackling homelessness among veterans. It calls for establishing a new National Center for Warrior Independence in Los Angeles.
A Center for Homeless Veterans. What's the goal there?
The stated goal is ambitious. House 6,000 homeless veterans by 2028. The order also mentions redirecting funds previously used for other purposes towards this effort.
Tackling veteran homelessness is definitely critical. That's a big goal, housing 6,000 veterans. What end is in the order?
Second, it aims to improve veterans' access to health care. Things like reducing wait times by expanding clinic hours, offering weekend appointments, increasing telehealth options. Basically trying to make it easier to get care alongside the existing community care program.
Okay, better access. And the third point?
Accountability. It directs the VA secretary to crack down on misconduct, make it easier to discipline employees, and even investigate cases where previously fired employees might have been rehired or given back pay.
So homelessness, healthcare access, accountability, those are the executive order points. But I also heard about potential staffing changes at the VA, big ones.
Yes, that's separate from the order, but part of the administration's broader plan. They propose cutting over 80,000 employees from the VA.
80,000? That's a huge number of jobs. What's the reasoning?
The stated goal is to return staffing levels to what they were in 2019, which was under 400,000 employees.
Okay, 80,000 cuts. What's been the reaction to that idea? I imagine it's controversial.
Extremely controversial. Democrats in Congress strongly oppose it. Veterans groups have raised alarms about, potential confusion and how it could impact the actual delivery of services.
Any specific warnings?
Yeah, Michael Missel, who served as the VA's Inspector General for nearly a decade under multiple administrations, warned publicly that the VA already struggles with having enough expertise in certain areas. He said cuts of this magnitude could cause real harm to veterans and lead to a significant loss of specialized knowledge within the agency.
That's a serious warning from a former watchdog. Okay, so we've covered these big, sweeping proposals, tax changes, potential cuts, VA restructuring. But are there smaller, more immediate changes happening that will directly affect people receiving Social Security or disability benefits right now?
Yes, absolutely. Moving away from the big legislative debates, there are some definite positive changes coming soon, specifically for people receiving Supplemental Security Income, that's SSI, and Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI.
Okay, good news then. Tell us about the SSDI changes first.
Sure. For FSDI recipients, and actually all Social Security beneficiaries, about 68 million people total, they'll see a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, or TOLA, starting in January 2025.
A COLA increase. What does that translate to in dollars?
Well, the average retirement benefit will go up by about $50 a month. It varies depending on your specific benefit amount, of course. And beneficiaries should get notices about their new amount in early December. They're apparently redesigned to be simpler and easier to understand this year.
Okay, a 2.5% bump starting January. $50 can certainly help. Now, what about SSI? You mentioned changes there too.
Yes, for SSI, there are actually three significant rule changes that are set to take effect in September 2024, so very soon.
September 2024. Okay. What are these changes aiming to do?
The overall goal is to make it easier for people to qualify for SSI and potentially increase the payment amounts for those who already receive it. It's part of a broader effort by the Social Security Administration to kind of update some outdated rules and improve the program.
Sounds promising. What's the first change?
The first one involves redefining what counts as a public assistance household. The definition is expanding.
How so?
Previously, pretty much everyone in the household had to be getting some kind of public assistance. Now, the rule changes. So it includes an SSI applicant or recipient living with at least one other person who receives what they call means-tested public income maintenance payments. And importantly, this now includes SNAP-P benefits, commonly known as food stamps.
Ah, okay. So let me see if I understand this for our listener. If you're applying for or getting SSI and you live with someone else who gets SNAP, that household composition might now help you qualify for SSI or get a higher SSI payment, whereas before it might not have.
That's exactly right. It broadens the definition. The SSA estimates this will increase payments for around 277,000 people currently getting SSI and allow about 109,000 new people to become eligible each year. Plus, it should simplify reporting for families.
That seems like a really practical change, especially linking it with SNAP-P. Okay, what's the second SSI rule change?
The second big one is that food assistance will no longer be counted as in-kind support and maintenance, or ISM.
ISM, remind us what that is.
Basically, under the old rules, if someone received free food or help paying for food from family, friends, a food pantry, whatever, that value could be counted as income, potentially reducing their SSI payment amount or even making them ineligible.
Wow, so getting help with groceries could actually hurt your SSI benefit.
Yes, historically. But starting this fall, that's changing. Food assistance received from others will no longer be counted as this type of unearned income.
That seems huge. Why the change?
Yeah. The goal is to, again, reduce reporting burdens for people, make the policy much simpler to administer, and make payments more predictable. It just simplifies things significantly. Important note, though, help with shelter costs, like rent or mortgage, will still be factored into SSI calculations, just not food.
Okay, so help with food is no longer a penalty. That feels like a major step towards fairness. What's the third change for SSI?
The third change expands a policy related to rental subsidies. There was an exception used for calculating how much a rental subsidy was worth, but it only applied in 7 states.
Only 7 states? That seems arbitrary.
It was. Now, they're expanding that specific calculation method nationwide.
And what's the impact of making that national?
It's projected to increase SSI payments by an average of about $132 a month for roughly 41,000 people. And it could also allow about 14,000 additional people to qualify for SSI each year who didn't before.
Wow, $132 a month average increase is significant for those folks. These SSI changes sound really positive, more accessible, maybe fairer.
I think that's the intent, yes. They seem like concrete steps to make the program work better for the people who rely on it. They really highlight how these systems aren't set in stone. They do evolve, and policy changes, big or small, have very real impacts.
Absolutely. Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today, a real deep dive into some pretty critical updates on Social Security, retirement planning, those federal benefits. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. From those stark warnings about Social Security running out of funds to the debates around new laws and these specific tweaks to SSI and SSDI, the whole landscape is definitely shifting.
Which really brings us back to the listener, doesn't it?
It does. It raises that crucial question. With all these projections, all these potential changes, What practical, proactive steps can you be taking right now to shore up your own financial security for retirement?
That really is the key question for you to think about. Remember, just understanding these complex issues, getting informed, that's always the vital first step before you can make good decisions. We really hope this deep dive gave you some of those essential insights.
Food for thought, definitely.
And maybe one final thought to leave you with as you plan your own future. We heard how political inaction over the past 30 years has taken many potential solutions for Social Security solvency off the table. So the question for us as individuals is, what potential options are we taking off our own future table by delaying our personal financial planning today?
A powerful question to ponder.
For Rachel, I'm Paul. Thanks so much for joining us for the deep dive on Financial Area. Welcome to Financial Area and welcome to the deep dive. I'm Paul.
And I'm Rachel. It's great to be here. We've got a really important topic lined up for you today.
We absolutely do. Our goal here with this deep dive is always to cut through all the noise, really dig into the details, and pull out the key insights that matter for your financial future.
Yeah, and today we're zeroing in on the latest on Social Security, retirement planning, and, other federal benefits, especially with all the recent reports and talk about new laws.
Exactly. We've been looking closely at things like the